These are the 11 most popular FPV drone simulators, and I've just spent the past week testing all of them. So today I'm going to show you which ones are truly worth the money, starting with the least expensive and moving all the way up to the most expensive. And then I'm going to rank them into 6 different categories so you know which one is best for you. First up is FPV Skydive. This is a completely free to download sim with the option of in-game purchases and is made by the company Orca. You know, the guys that made those epic looking goggles a little while back. Anyway, regardless, this is the best free sim that we have got available. It's got a racing mode, a challenges mode, a freestyle mode, and a multiplayer option as well, all of which really kicks the simulator off to a pretty smooth start. You will quickly, however, find its limitations, starting off with the fact that pretty much everything has got a paywall attached to it at some point. So you can only get access to a certain amount of races, a few maps, a couple of training lessons. Speaking of which, are not the best. The training program is super text heavy, meaning there is just a truckload of reading and a less than optimal amount of actual interaction. So yeah, it's nice to have it included, but it's not really a great way to get started. All up, it's hard to truly fault this as it is a completely free sim and it does offer a lot for being that. But nothing about the simulator is really amazing other than the cost of entry. 3 out of 10. Next is a pretty inaccessible simulator for many, but it's also free. Kind of. It's the DJI Virtual Flight Simulator. Now, the app itself is indeed free to download, but if you want to connect your remote up to it, you're going to need the DJI remote, which is going to cost you about $200. Let's say though, you get yourself one of those and, you know, what else does the sim offer? Not much, in all honesty. The maps are super limited and the physics feel really floaty. The training program is certainly much better than that of FPV Skydive, but it teaches you how to fly using DJI's method, like double tap to arm. Again, not really something that I would recommend starting with. The only thing that is really going for the simulator though is the fact that if you've also got the DJI goggles, you can connect them up to the simulator and have a fully immersive, low latency experience, which is more fun than staring at a computer screen. But because of its massive controller limitation, it's in a very niche position. If you've already purchased the DJI controller, then sure, you probably could just download the sim and use it, but if you've just spent $200 on a remote, surely you can spare a few more dollars to get a much better sim. 2 out of 10. Alright, third on the list, and we've finally gotten to our first paid for simulator. This is the Curry Kitten FPV simulator, which costs a very affordable $2. Yep, that's cheaper than a cup of coffee. Now, if you can navigate yourself around the super unintuitive menu system, you'll find that you get the choice of 3 maps to either freestyle or race around in. The maps are a decent size and have got things like planes and cars to chase around, but if I'm being honest, that's really where the good things stop. The maps feel very empty with a massive lack of features, the racing is super limited to a few set racetracks, and there's no way to actually customize your real drone, let alone choose another one. To add a cherry on top, there is no training program, so you're limited to having to fly with external sources like YouTube. Now, being made by an individual FPV pilot right from our community, I have massive respect to Curry Kitten FPV launching this 4 years ago, but I do now feel like it's outdated and pretty limited in terms of what you can do within it. 2 out of 10. Okay, let's go for our next simulator, FPV Freerider, which comes in at $6. Being 3 times the price of the Curry Kitten simulator, I'd be expecting 3 times the value, but sadly, this is the home screen that you see as soon as you launch the sim. It really looks like it was created back in the early 2000s or something. Now, in regards to the actual simulator side of things, the maps are super small and have very little to do within them. The graphics are mediocre and there's no training program or customization of drones either. The only positive things I have to say is that the racetrack generator is a nice touch, you know, being able to create super basic racetracks for yourself. And the physics are the most realistic so far, but other than that, this simulator is a big no-go for me and feels like the most outdated and most expensive simulator yet. 0.5 out of 10. Thankfully, the 5th simulator might actually be here to save the day. That sim being DRL, which costs $10. This is the first FPV simulator that truly feels like a lot of time and effort was put into it straight from the first impressions. It's the most feature-rich simulator so far, having a whole bunch of things to do, and some very unique game modes that you won't be able to find anywhere else. Starting from the super intuitive main menu, you can access freestyle, racing, training, live tournaments, multiplayer, and a physics modifier too. More on that in a moment. In terms of the maps, you really are going to struggle to get bored of them as there are 29 completely different maps, all of which have a bunch of features or racetracks built into them. If you did get bored, then you can race on one of the hundreds. if not thousands, of community-made tracks with either a totally custom drone or, again, a community-made one. Now, if you're really up for a challenge, this simulator offers it. In fact, if you're good enough, you could actually become a real-life racing champion from it. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is a DRL tournament where some of the best FPV pilots in the world compete against each other in real life, and it gets broadcast out to a bunch of places. The fact that you literally can compete within the simulator to become the next DRL competitor is a crazy cool concept. So there's that, if that floats your boat. It literally gets even better though. Within the simulator, there is a very easy to follow, super well explained training program that covers everything from complete noob to full flying acro. It's actually the way that I learned how to fly over 4 years ago now, and I just recently used this exact training program to teach my friend Tyron how to fly as well. Then, the last thing to rave on about too is the physics modifier. This is a complete process where you can take a real deep dive to adjust the physics across the entire simulator and tweak them to exactly your liking. For me, the process isn't really something that I'm super interested in, so I'll be judging the physics based on how it comes fresh from the download. At this stage, you might be wondering, well damn, where does it start to lack then? And in all honesty, it feels like it's a bit behind in terms of graphics. Like, they're not terrible, but as you'll soon see, they really aren't super good either. So overall, the customization and variety within the sim really give it a great edge, and the fact that it comes in at $10 makes it an amazing choice for beginners as well as pros. 8 out of 10. Now, it might seem like that's going to be a really difficult simulator to beat, but it's important to keep in mind that the next 6 simulators cost even more. Let's look into one of the more popular freestyle sims, Uncrashed. It cost $15, and when I first opened up my menus, my hopes were set immediately low. However, as soon as I opened up the first map, absolutely everything changed. I have seriously never seen graphics this good ever in an FPV simulator. The cherry on top here too is just how damn well it runs on my MacBook, which, as you'll find out soon, isn't always the case. Anyways, you get the choice of 19 completely different maps, all with things to do within them, so if freestyle and free flight is your thing, you're gonna have a really hard time getting bored with this. Combine the realistic graphics and physics that feel close to what DRL offers, and you've got a pretty good look and feel. Where you might struggle though is with the racing element. It does exist and there are different tracks within each map, but that's what you're limited to. There are no multiplayer races against your friends, no making your own maps, and overall it does feel limited for racing. The other limitation though is the lack of a training program. Like, if this simulator included a solid program to learn in these stunning environments, wouldn't that just be the best? But nope, there's nothing. This sim certainly feels like it would be a good purchase for experienced pilots who are maybe just a bit bored of the usual sims, kind of like me, and just want to jump into something super fun. 6.5 out of 10. Now, similar to Uncrashed, but coming in at $16, is the AI Drone Simulator. Now, it would be pretty easy to think that this is a really modern sim thanks to having AI in its name, but when you open up that first main menu, I think you'd be able to figure out pretty quickly that that is not the case. The entire experience in this sim is very close to what Uncrashed offers, with plenty of maps at high detail and a focus on freestyle flying. The differentiating fact here though is you can actually download community-made drones and make your own, which is a nice touch that seems to be missing from a lot of the previous simulators. Where this simulator let me down though is with how it handles the graphics. It's not nearly as smooth as Uncrashed, meaning I have to lower the graphics to get it to perform well, which is counterintuitive to what its biggest positive is. It's honestly rendered a little bit obsolete with Uncrashed, upping it on nearly every aspect just a little bit, and without any major standout features aside from community-made drones and maps. It's actually a hard one to recommend in 2024. 5 out of 10. Next up is one that you might be a bit more familiar with, Trip FPV. This sim costs $17, unlike the previous two, offers stunning graphics. One of the literal biggest selling points of this simulator is the map size and the attention to detail. Like, seriously, these maps are so freaking huge that if your computer isn't a good gaming computer, you won't be able to handle it. Much like me, using my M1 MacBook, which is not a gaming computer. This simulator really struggles to run smoothly at any rate. It does offer an M1 and M2 experimental version to run on my MacBook, which is supposed to give it an increase in performance, but instead, for me at least, it just made my game crash and didn't actually give me any noticeable increase anywhere. Performance aside for a moment though, this simulator builds on top of its biggest feature, the graphics, and continues to strive towards being a solid sim for all. We've got some really cool racing tracks, plenty of settings to change how the drone flies, and the physics too. There's even a training program too, which you'd think would immediately make me happy, right? Unfortunately, this is possibly one of the worst programs that we've seen yet. So bad, in fact, that if a beginner did purchase this and try to learn using that program, I don't think that there would actually be much hope for them ever trying again. There are spelling mistakes straight off the bat, no toning down of sensitivity, and to be honest, even I struggled to complete the first few parts of the lessons. Seriously, I think it would just be better if this program was removed altogether, or better yet, totally revised to be something so much more comprehensive. Another note of disappointment too is that there are still only 4 maps to fly, which yes, are massive, but I can't help but feel limited when Uncrashed and AI Drone both offer so many more. So yeah, this feels like it has so much potential, but is let down by how poorly it runs on my MacBook, the lack of map choices, and especially the training program. 5.5 out of 10. So far, we've had 8 simulators and only DRL has gotten close to being a 10 out of 10 perfect simulator. As we move into the most expensive 3 simulators, I'll be keeping their price in mind and comparing them back to the many good sims that we've had for much lower costs. Starting off the more costly 3 with Liftoff at $20. Just to remind you that this is now twice the price of DRL, so it's got a lot to live up to if it wants to compete. Thankfully, starting out, we do have the best user interface I've seen yet, which is simply the easiest to use and navigate through. In the menu, you'll find tons of features like racing, freestyle, free flight, multiplayer, track builder, drone builder, and a training program. Whew, feels good to have a bit of competition again, right? Now, if we have a look into the actual experience, you'll find graphics that are good and really well optimized, a solid base of physics too, and plenty of features to mess around in inside of the maps. If you want to introduce moving objects like cars around the racetrack, then you'll need to purchase the additional slipstream pack for $4, which feels a little bit meh considering you get those features included in cheaper sims, but regardless, it does provide a whole lot more to do and fly around with. The maps themselves are pretty big and seem similar to DRL size, possibly even a little bit bigger, but there are fewer maps and it does feel limited by them just a little bit. The freestyle mode, however, is something I freaking love and I have no idea why it's not included in more simulators. I know what you're thinking now.
What do you mean, Brody? All the simulators have freestyle mode in them where you get to fly around and do what you like.
And you're right, but in Liftoff, freestyle mode is totally different to free flight mode. In Liftoff's freestyle mode, you get a set time limit to hit as many tricks, features, and close calls as you can on any given map. You get rewarded points for every trick, and it really brings a game feel to freestyle, similar to the payoff that you get when beating a race time. What else is nice and rewarding though is the training program. Finally. Last time I tested this program out, it linked you to YouTube videos and was really not a good way to start out. Now, however, it's totally revamped and is a purpose-built introductory training program. Massive kudos to Liftoff for putting in the extra effort with the animation here too. Now, although I'm not personally a massive fan of the methods it uses for teaching newbies, line of sight, I do think that it's the only other training program that I would actually recommend someone to use alongside DRL. My main gripe with the simulator, however, is the fact that there is really no standout feature. Everything is simply just good. Like, the racing is good, but it lacks an intuitive track guide like DRL. The graphics are good, but don't come close to that of Uncrashed or Trip. The freestyle and free flight are good, but the maps feel limiting. You can probably see where I'm going with this one. It feels like a really well-rounded, jack-of-all, master-of-none simulator at a fair price for what it offers. 8.5 out of 10. This next sim, however, is not a jack-of-all whatsoever. This one is Velocidrone, and it comes in at $22. Why I started off by saying it's not a jack-of-all is simply because this simulator feels very purpose-built and very specifically tailored towards one type of pilot. That pilot being a racer. It's got the best multiplayer and racing interfaces around, the physics are the closest to real life out of any simulator, and the map building is simply amazing. I'd say that if you're after a simulator that is going to give you the most transferable skills from sim to reality, this is probably the one to go for. Where it excels in its racing aspects, it does fall short in nearly every other area, which is actually okay considering it's not trying to be an all-in-one simulator. Now, there are a few other packs to purchase additionally, just like Liftoff, to add race cars to the racetrack, except this one costs $6, which would then take the total cost up to $28. It's kind of at the point where I would say I'd opt for another simulator with moving features included and better graphics, kind of like Uncrashed. Basically though, if you're a strict racer or want the most transferable skills, this is probably the simulator for you. If, however, you aren't into racing, then I'd probably steer very well clear of it. 6 out of 10. Okay, time for our final and most expensive sim before we crown the winners of our 6 categories. Introducing DCL the Game, coming in at a whopping $30. Now, I specifically say that this is DCL the Game and not DCL the Sim because that's what it's actually called, and I've started to understand why they've gone that route. Instead of striving to be the best simulator at any one thing, they've gone for a totally different approach and made this feel like as much of a gaming experience as possible. Think nearly any car racing game, but now switch the cars out for drones. That's what this is. Instead of building drones and making it feel realistic, you instead have to win races to earn in-game money, with which you can then buy new drones to fly. There are also a load of different racetracks, and it feels like a slightly better version of DRL in terms of the competitive racing element. The graphics are solid too, and look great. It feels like DRL racing, but in a trip environment. What is very apparent, however, is the fact that this game costs $30, which, for what you get, is pretty damn expensive. In fact, I'd say it's much too expensive for what it offers when you compare it to all the other sims. However, it does feel like more of a game rather than a sim. So if you're looking for a drone sim with a purpose, like racing to win in-game money to then buy a new drone, this really is the only option that offers that. It does so with great graphics, making it a decent amount of fun, but you are limited to just racing. There's no training program, and the freestyle modes are really certainly limited in terms of what the maps offer feature-wise. 5 out of 10. Alright, that is all the sims covered, so the time has come to rank them in 6 different categories to make sure that you leave this video knowing exactly which sim is best for you. Now, if you're looking at what sim to get, I think it would be fair to say that you're looking to improve your drone flying skills, right? If that is you, I've got just the perfect thing. Every couple of weeks, I send out my newsletter to hundreds of other FPV pilots to help them improve their skills in every aspect of our hobby. So to make sure you don't miss out on any future tips and tricks, head down to the first link in the description and sign up now. I'll wait. Okay, we good? Good. Let's rank these sims. Our first category is the best choice for beginners. This is the sim that I can easily recommend to anyone looking to start off from nothing, learn how to fly, and grow their skills through multiple different aspects. The winner here is DRL. It simply offers the most comprehensive training program for anyone looking to get started. Like, you could have never flown anything in your life and you'd be able to learn through this one. Furthermore, there's plenty to do after you've learned how to fly, and you can tackle either one of the big sides of the hobby, freestyle or racing, right within the simulator. The best part, aside from the training program, is the price. Being just $10, it's pretty accessible and kind of offers the most bang for your buck. I do, however, have a run-up here as well. This one simply lacked the budget price and had a slightly higher level of entry to the training program. That simulator is Liftoff. Okay, the second category is the best choice for realistic physics. This is the sim that is going to be the best choice for those who want the most realistic feeling simulator above all else. The winner here is Velocidrone, and I'm sure you can understand why. Although it only offers solid racing, it really does provide you with the most transferable skill set possible thanks to the physics. Our run-up for this category is, funnily enough, Liftoff yet again. It's not nearly as close to reality as Velocidrone is, but for the most part it does feel less floaty than all the other sims, and the second closest to real life. I do also want to add an honorable mention for DRL though, as having an entire mode to adjust your physics to exactly how you want them is pretty special. Alright, our third category is the best high performance graphics. This is for the simulator that looks the best and runs those amazing graphics well on my MacBook M1. The winner here is Uncrashed. Honestly, hats off to the developers of this one. The stunning graphics combined with the silky smoothness of the flight experience is like nothing I've ever flown before. I am going to throw a small curveball in here though and say that the runner-up is Trip. Now, I can't say much positive about it for running the graphics well on my MacBook, but I have heard of and seen other pilots running everything maxed out on their gaming computer, and it really is a league ahead of all the other simulators too. Too bad, it still doesn't run on my computer. It might have stolen the position of winner if it did. Alright, next up is category 4, the best choice for racing. There was certainly a bit of competition in this one with DRL, DCL, and Velocidrone all competing heavily here, but I have chosen the one that nearly every racer would swear by, and that one is Velocidrone. It's by far the most robust racing simulator and holds the strongest community for racing too. My runner-up here though is slightly interesting though. I've actually chosen DCL. Now, I think DCL takes the runner-up position because it's actually a really fun simulator for racing. The fact that you have a reason to play and race is a pretty strong factor there too. Okay, and for the fifth category, we have the most fun simulator. I totally get that this is going to be a very personal opinion, as what is fun differs for everyone, but for me personally, the most fun that I've ever had on any simulator is Uncrashed. The graphics, performance, maps, and insane amount of things to do really do add up to be a super fun experience. Like, I genuinely had to remind myself that I was there to test out every simulator and not spend too long messing around on it simply because I was enjoying my time way too much. The run-up for this one though was actually a little bit harder though, as Uncrashed stood out so far from the competition for me, it was an easy pick. Runner-up, however, does go to DRL. I've chosen it because it would be seriously difficult for me to get bored with the hundreds of different tracks and maps. The graphics are pretty good, meaning I don't feel like it's lacking, and there's just a ton to do. Alright, that now brings us to our final category, the best overall choice. This takes absolutely everything into consideration, from price to graphics to features in game, and from my testing, I can confidently say that the best choice overall does not have many standout features. Instead, it simply excels at providing a good experience all around, doesn't lack in any one area, and is really easy to use. The winner today is Liftoff. As I mentioned earlier, it's a jack of all, master of none, which when looking for an overall winner is exactly what I was after. There is only one other simulator that came slightly close to competing for this category, so I'm naming it runner-up for the best overall, and that one is DRL. It's more geared towards racing, but overall feels like the only other simulator that offers everything at a solid level, especially for its price. Now, if you want to actually see one of those simulators teach a complete noob how to fly FPV drones in less than 24 hours, we've got exactly that video right here. We'll see you again shortly.